Okay, so with all Star Wars ruling everything right now, the box office, and I mean, you can't go anywhere without seeing something Star Wars, whether it be chewing gum or cereal or even macaroni and cheese, which whatever.
I have Star Wars pocket tissues, which was pretty.
I bought my daughter Star Wars Campbell soup. So that's not a plug because it's just filled with salt water, but it's just Campbell soup.
The force in every bite, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Raised cholesterol force in every bite. But what has been interesting is all the other movies that they've been talking about, other than the actual main storyline of the big three.
Yeah,
it's big two at this point. But
it's kind of funny because as soon as that movie dropped and people actually went and saw it, the very next thing out of their breath was, "Oh, I can't wait till Rogue One," or "I can't wait till the next story."
Yeah, I'm really psyched about the Rogue One. I can't wait to see the first footage of that because, I mean, me and you went to the celebration like we talked about earlier. And, I mean, the biggest thing that I got excited for, other than obviously Episode 7, was that they got, like, the director of photography for all these, like, war movies, like, Black Hawk Down or something like that, or Saving Private Ryan. I can't remember the exact movies, but, like, just the fact that they said that those were the ones that they were going to go after or that they brought in, like, just made me think, like, oh, my God, this is going to be gritty. This is going to be dark. This is going to actually feel like a war. So that I'm really excited for. I know you are. But then they released this other news about a solo Han, like no pun intended, but a solo Han Solo movie.
Yeah, right.
So
I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about that. I really don't. How do you get somebody? How do you get a young Han Solo? How do you get a young Harrison Ford? I mean, do you remember The Last Crusade, the movie The Last Crusade, the Indiana Jones movie, and they got River Phoenix to play. I went back and watched that again, and it's still like he tries really hard,
right?
To be like Harrison Ford, even down to the the chin being cut and
the scar, right?
And the type of when he yells and stuff, he does that weird yell when he's hurt or scared or something like that. But other than that, like I just couldn't see it. So this is a tall order. Like, if the one thing that's going to pull you out of the movie is if the actor is nothing like Harrison Ford, or he's imitating Harrison Ford.
Right. And I mean, I like Han Solo's character. I like him a lot. He's got some really iconic lines, in the trilogy, and he's even got some really good ones in The Force Awakens. But to me, like, what are they going to talk about? Like him smuggling shit and him, getting on some kind of like smuggling adventure. To me, that doesn't really interest me. And I'm also wondering now that I've seen The Force Awakens, and again, spoilers, so don't listen to this if you've never seen The Force Awakens, because why would you skip the first two parts and go to number 3? But but I wonder if they decided to do a Han Solo movie because they killed off Han Solo in The Force Awakens, and they're like, well, now I get no more Han Solo. And then they're like, well, maybe you do, because here's a prequel almost, or a pre-telling, like, of a young Han Solo. And to me, that didn't seem really interesting. I liked the fact that I didn't know anything about Han Solo. Like, he just looked like this character that you just met in a bar, and his backstory is just like, you kind of know everything you want, that I want to know anyway, from A New Hope. Like, he's a smuggler. He's not that great of a guy in the beginning. He's always looking out for him until he meets, Luke and Leia, and then he, his mind kind of changes. So I like that about it.
Yeah, I do too. And like you said, everything you need to know about him, you know in A New Hope, and which I hated that that was changed a little bit with the Greedo, shoots first kind of thing.
Well, in my world, that didn't happen. So
right, I know exactly. But you know everything you need to know, and they even mentioned, he won the Millennium Falcon from Lando. Chewie has a life debt to him, and that's, I mean, the only thing I can see happening in the Star Wars story, or whatever you want to call it. I still like anthology better. The Star Wars story is that how it came to be, but do you really need to really need to see that? Like, I'm sure he'll have a love interest who probably gets killed or probably disappears. You know, it's like a James Bond thing. You know,
Right.
he does some sort of smuggling mission and has a female comrade, which, you know, later on he's going to be, you know, in the rebellion and be with Leia. So do we really need to see him meet Chewie for the first time, or see him win the Millennium Falcon from a young Lando, or, you know, what story could they possibly tell?
I mean, basically, from what I remember of how he won, was he played like some kind of card game and beat Lando.
Right.
Don't really need to see that.
Which Lando probably gambled to win Cloud City too, didn't he?
Or something like that. I mean, that's what he mentions, but
yeah.
that's just like character building without even needing the character, you know?
Right, right.
So, like, I don't understand where I would want to see in that, because here's my problem with just thinking about it now, is that if you show a Han Solo movie and he's going to smuggle something and then he turns and helps somebody out, to me that takes away the character that you meet in A New Hope, because I always took it as Han always looked out for him and Chewie, and that's it, and that's all they ever needed or wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they turn around for a greater cause. Now, if you go out and do a Han movie where you show all this stuff and he gets into like a smuggling adventure, some kind of adventure where he helps somebody else out, like that kind of takes away that like the character was always like that, and that wasn't a big deal for him to turn around and help Luke at the very end of the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's not a big stretch. It wouldn't be a big stretch, and it would kind of ruin that part of the character for me. And
I don't know what story they would tell. I know that they got the writer from Empire and, you know, and all that, and TFA to do Han Solo. That's really the only thing that got me a little bit excited about it. But at the same time, I was like, do we really need, like, there's other characters I think that would be more interesting to tell. And also, I think you brought up this point before in many conversations that we have. Whenever you do prequels, there's no sense of like you know that they're going to survive at the end.
Right.
You know, obviously we know Han dies now, but I mean in the past it's like there's no like it's not really thrilling or really exciting in any kind of way. You're just
I think the biggest part about the Han Solo movie is that as of right now, unless I see, you know, whenever I see a trailer for it, that'll blow me away. But as of right now, I can't really think of a story that I would want to see more than, say, you know, Rogue One, where they show something they've never shown before. You know, they show the war of Star Wars. You know, they show the people on the ground type thing.
Yes, and that's the story. I've always wanted to know how they got the plans to the Death Star. I did want to know that, because obviously all those people probably were sacrificed their lives to get this thing. But like, right. I wanted to know how they got it. They just said, "Oh, we have it," you know, and off they go. That's how the story begins.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I mean, obviously.
And then what we want to see, and here's the thing, like Han basically, when you meet him in A New Hope, you kind of just understand that he's just been doing a lot of bad shit for a long time, you know, smuggling and swindling a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if that's the case, and Han's big turnaround to being a complete human being, basically, is to go turn around and help the rebellion, do you really want to see a 2-hour Han movie where he's just being a dick?
Yeah.
You know, like you can't
Some people might. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be Harrison Ford. It's going to be somebody else.
Right.
So
right.
that leads us into the movie that got us all in like for me, and I think you too, got us really excited when somebody released some fanboy or somebody released a fake image of a Star Wars anthology. At that point, that's what it was called.
Right.
And it was titled Obi-Wan. And I flipped shit because I was like, oh my God, I would love it because Ewan McGregor is still alive and he basically spends 20 years doing, I don't know what the fuck he's doing, because I didn't read any of the books that might have come out during that time frame for him. Like, I don't know if anything was ever told about him during that time frame, but
yeah,
I was thinking,
yeah.
I would love to have Ewan McGregor have another shot at the Obi-Wan character with a better story and a better director, because that fucking guy can act, and his talents were completely wasted in the prequels. And I hope and pray that got them thinking about an Obi-Wan movie, because unlike Han Solo, you don't really get a story arc in the prequels for Obi-Wan. There's no story arc even in the original trilogy. There's no story arc for Obi-Wan.
No, there's none. There's none. In the prequels, he's just background fodder, and I think even he, like I said before, doesn't really like the prequels either. I think.
Well, nobody really does. Probably.
Well, I know, but imagine being a really good actor and being in a shitty movie. That's got to suck. You know what
Especially
I mean?
a name that big.
They don't give him any kind of real good lines. They don't give him really anything to do other than running after Qui-Gon, and then he has this sniveling little kid running after him, and he doesn't really get a whole lot to do there. And George kind of lied about the whole relationship back then. So I think it would be really interesting and really cool to see these writers that are now writing the Star Wars movies and these directors that they're getting and all this stuff and the money behind Disney and and all this stuff and the creativity. I think that it would be a lot better film, and I think Ewan McGregor's talents would not be wasted. It would be really interesting to see what what he's been doing for 20, 30 years on Tatooine, looking over Luke.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's got to been doing something. You can bring Liam Neeson back as the ghost, talking to him, because that is canon.
Right.
You can, there's a number of things you can do.
And there's also, they basically try and say that they dispatched all the Jedis in the prequels, but they didn't, because Rebels is supposed to be canon, and those are two Force-sensitive characters right there.
Right.
Kanan
it's a vast universe, dude. It's a vast universe. There could be Jedi all over the place that just don't know that.
Or even Force-sensitive people. And
right.
then we mentioned this offline, but I was suggesting if you were going to do that, you might even be able to bring in Darth Vader into this, but very, sensitively, because you'd have to be careful to not ruin the original trilogy by bringing or adding too much to the Obi-Wan.
Because Vader never sensed
story.
him. Yeah, Vader never sensed him until A New Hope, so he was gone all that time.
He never sensed him on the planet that he grew up on.
No. Nope. He didn't think to go back to Tatooine ever.
No, his
only
family. Yeah, his only family that Anakin ever fucking has, that he finds out, he never goes back and says, "Hey, have you seen these people?"
Right. His number one excuse, though, dude, is and it's canon. He hates sand. He hates sand. He doesn't want to go back there. He doesn't want to get in the circuitry and fry his circuit.
He doesn't even eat salt because it reminds him of sand.
That's right. Everything's saltless.
So we were talking about what we would want to see.
Yeah, what would that be like? What would be an ultimate Obi-Wan Kenobi movie be like?
For me, I would like to know. I would like to see him training himself, because if you watch any of the Clone Wars and the Rebels stuff, there's mention of, or actually I think it's just Clone Wars, not Rebels. And did they say that Clone Wars is canon?
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so. No, I think once Disney took over Lucasfilm, they canceled Clone Wars because they were just going to keep going.
That's right, because there's missing episodes. But it doesn't matter, because Lucas gave us out in Episode 3 where he basically tells Obi-Wan that he has training to do, and that is an allusion to training to become a Force ghost, basically.
Right, pretty much.
So I would like to see some kind of training or meditation. It doesn't have to be long, but something like that kind of gives us an insight of how, this has happened. I'd like to know how the fuck he became, Ben Kenobi. Like you didn't change anything. You just called yourself Ben Kenobi, and you had the same last name.
Kenobi's a really popular name in the universe.
Or something. Right, like there was, I didn't see a Steve Kenobi or Mark
Bob Kenobi.
Or, hey, did you see Billy Kenobi down the street? He wants to go hang out. So I'd like to see how he's living kind of a little bit in exile, basically. I would like to see maybe some conversations through the Force between him and Yoda. That's another way to bring back Yoda alive.
Yeah.
And then what would be really cool is basically taking a page out of Rebels, is that perhaps all the Jedi are not killed, and there are some either Force-sensitive people out there that we're starting to train, or there are Jedi out there that are not really considered Jedi Knights yet. Like Kanan wasn't really a Jedi Knight. He was he was ever dubbed the Jedi Knight. He was still in training.
Yeah,
so,
they could bring him
something
in.
like that where Obi-Wan has to leave Tatooine to, to go help, other people, because they did send out a distress signal, I think, somewhere in episode 3.
They did from the temple, but it said to stay away from the temple.
Right, but you could have something responding to that, saying like, I don't know. They can make something up, but basically what it would be like Obi-Wan trying to help, Force sensitive or Jedi in training.
Here's the thing. I mean, I don't know if I speak for everybody, but we never got to see Vader run around and slay all the Jedi. I would fucking love to see that. I would love to see that. I would love to see him in his prime.
That was actually supposed to happen in episode 3.
Yeah.
I know I've told you this before, but maybe not everybody went to Celebration 3. But in Celebration 3, they actually talk about Nick Gillard, who was the stunt coordinator or the fight coordinator, said that, there's a sequence where you see Anakin basically slaughtering most of the Jedi in the temple, and he actually kills Nick Gillard, who's a Jedi master in that sequence. And there's a sequence in there that they filmed, but we've never seen any footage of it. But they did train for it. They did, make the coordination for it. They practiced it, whatever, and they filmed it, but they never released it. I've never seen footage of it, and I've never even heard it mentioned again.
That's a real bummer. I would have loved to have seen that. But see, I think because it would have drawn attention away from the Obi-Wan Anakin fight, which, oh my gosh, we can go the rounds about that, because like Obi-Wan gets punked, twice by Count Dooku, but then who's way powerful, and then he goes up against Anakin. I mean, he killed Darth Maul, dude, and he can't defeat a sniveling, little kid. I don't know. It's just kind of really off balance, but I would love to see Vader in his suit fighting in his prime. We never got to see that ever. Except for in the game Force Unleashed, right? Is it Force Unleashed?
You see a little bit there.
Yeah.
That's a video game.
Yeah, still. But it would be really interesting to see that. And Obi-Wan, again, poor Obi-Wan is like the big failure. He's like just keeps trying to get things going, and then things don't go his way, and that could be another thing where he tries to.
Well, there's a lot of time in there, and you don't have to tell the full story in one, or you can tell a continuing story, because again, he drops off Luke. He drops off Luke, and I'm guessing he's like, I don't know, 18, 20 years by the time he meets him again later on. So there's a lot of things that you could.
And right now he's the perfect. Right now he's the perfect age.
He's a little bit older
age right now.
Yeah, you could actually cut right into where he, where he basically is got a bigger beard. He's a little bit more gray. Not old, not too old, but maybe, in late 30s, early 40s.
Like Luke is probably what, 7 or 8 right about now, or 10?
Yeah,
I don't know, something. So he could totally. They could pull off a really cool movie, I think, with him.
Yeah, they would just have to be really sensitive to not mess with the original trilogy. Like they can't do a Lucas and like fuck with the entire original trilogy. Like you can't introduce something that completely like screws up the original trilogy.
Well, that's a good point. They tried to do that when that show Enterprise came out, which was like the last Star Trek show because it killed everything. They did that prequel, and like every episode they tried to like bring in, Klingons and all this other stuff that they didn't meet until Kirk was captain, or like way even farther. Like they had the Borg episode, which I was like, what? How are you going to bring the Borg in? They don't show up until TNG.
No, that's like Smallville.
They just did all this weird like stuff, but they did it in a way that didn't interfere with the timeline, like, they still don't get met until way later. Or they did a time travel thing.
In that case, that's not like Smallville.
Yeah, but they did the Borg was a whole time travel thing. Like the Enterprise comes across the Borg because they had traveled back in time, and they were stuck on a planet, and that's how they introduced them. But I was like, I don't like that. I want you to tell new stories, Obviously, Obi-Wan can't meet Vader, or Vader can't sense him, or stuff like that. They would have to stay away from that. He has to be in the shadows or run around.
Whatever. If they decided to do that, like they would have to be really sensitive to where there would be no winner in the fight. There would not be a winner in the fight. They would because when Obi-Wan meets him again, or meets him in A New Hope, Vader is the more powerful one. And
yes, when I was about the learner, now I am.
Yeah.
Or I was once the learner, now I'm the master. But he also says to like Tarkin, he's like, or he says to himself, I haven't felt this presence since, and then he doesn't finish, and he just walks off. So it could have been 10 years prior.
You could have. Yeah, exactly. So that line, leads it to whatever, and their interaction in A New Hope leaves the door open for, one or two interactions at least before they meet each other again in A New Hope, because he never finishes that line. I haven't felt his presence since.
Yeah, because
now
they
you assume it's episode 3.
They could fight. They could fight, and maybe Vader bests him and thinks he's dead. I don't know. Like he could fall down a hole or something.
No, I would think it would need to be even. If they do ever meet, it would have to be even, because it just can't happen because of the line that he says afterwards, where he's like, the learner and the master line. Like you can't have Vader win.
Well,
and then say that line later.
But Tarkin says stuff like, that religion's gone, or he's long dead, or something. God, why can't I remember? I've seen that movie so many times and I can't remember certain lines. But I remember Tarkin saying something like, "Oh, you're crazy. He's gone. That religion's
right.
like dead." But
they could make that could make for a good ending for an Obi-Wan movie where something blows up and he makes it seem like he actually did die in the explosion or something like that.
Yeah.
Where I don't know, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that whoever, if they ever do decide to do this movie and they decide to bring Vader in, they need to be really careful with how their interactions go, if they even interact, because again, you can't ruin the original trilogy by introducing something in those movies, but I would still love to see Ewan McGregor in a good Star Wars movie.
Yes, I know, me too. I think they owe him. I really think they owe him. I mean, I remember I was listening to somebody or read something where they were like, "Can we just do the prequels over again?"
Oh yeah, I saw that too. I was like, this would be a good time to redo the prequels. I was like, yes, if they keep making Transformers movies, they can fucking remake the
prequels. Yeah, they could. Hey, they did 2 different Clone Wars cartoons. I mean, they did, the guy that did Samurai Jack did. First batch, and then they completely negated those and redid the Clone Wars from scratch with Dave Filoni.
I wonder if there's something in the contract where they can't do it. Like Lucas is like, yeah, you can't redo the prequels. You can't rehash them. I bet you he is so still full of himself that he put something in the contract where it would not surprise me where they can't touch the prequels. That would not surprise me at all.
It wouldn't surprise me either, and I think, JJ, it seems like he knows that the prequels are canon, and he tried to honor that by doing certain things, like he had Ewan McGregor come in and do a line, he had Frank Oz come in and do a line, and he had...
But Frank Oz was both...
Well, yeah, that's true.
Original.
And then he did have...
he only had one throwaway line that was... Not a throwaway line, but he only had one line, which we talked about before about the clones, and that was it. That was the only mention for the prequels.
They you saw the concept artwork between, on Anakin. Let's talk about that for a second. They had concept artwork about Anakin being even as a ghost, trying to figure out if he's light or dark, which that was kind of interesting, but that would have brought up a lot more questions. When you die, he came to the light before he died, but then they're saying well, even as a Force ghost, he goes back and forth between good and bad. And I was like, what?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
Yeah, it raises more questions, just like when he put Hayden Christensen's ghost into the ending of Jedi, and you're like, well, wait a minute. He was a dick 30%, 40, 50% of his life. He turns light for the last 5 minutes of his life, and he gets to be fucking 20 years old again. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan Kenobi was fucking, good the entire time, and he's still old as fuck.
I think that's stupid too. I mean, they say like, you know, you come back as a Force ghost when you're like the last time that you're good or something like that is what it's basically saying. So basically you could be good for 10 years of your life and then be a fucking dick for the rest of your life, and then when you die you can just come back as your young self again, going like, hey, yay. You know, meanwhile Obi-Wan is like, you know, crippled and walking around as an old man, old Force ghost.
Yeah, that's
that I can think of, again, it comes to, well, if we do episodes 7, 8, and 9, we can have Hayden Christensen's alive, so we can have him, you know, do some cameos and stuff, because Sebastian Shaw is long gone. So that's the only thing I can think of. Like, I always think that these people mostly think about marketing and merchandise. So it's like we need to do stuff where we can, you know, easily bring people back or do this or that. Like,
you know, I think they need to stay away from. I think they need to stay away from Hayden Christensen, just mainly because like it was just really bad, and he's never been good in a lot of the things he's ever been in. Ewan McGregor is a little bit different, where that guy knows how to act, and you know it's the same thing with like Liam Neeson. Like that guy knows how to act. Like you don't look at Hayden Christensen and go, well, it was just a bad script and it was a bad, you know, director. Yes, you know it was, but at the same time, he's never really done anything that you were like, okay, this guy can really act.
It's a double-edged sword. He was good in his life as a House, and I think Shattered, but there's a lot of stuff that he's been in where I didn't really care for him. But it's a double-edged sword. I mean, you do need to have a good director that can pull, you know, your acting abilities out. You know, I think he was hired mostly for his height and for the look more than anything else. You know, I think they probably could have looked around a little bit more and found somebody more, you know, suitable. Now, there's a lot of people on this planet, you know. I can't believe the biggest casting call ever is for Han Solo. Did you hear it was like 2,500 candidates or something like that? Something crazy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't really care about that. I'd like to know what kind of story they're going to tell more than anything.
Well, yeah. That's true, but like, I don't know. Whoever they hire is going to be scrutinized like a son of a bitch. You know.
It's not easy shoes to fill at all.
Well, you know, here's the thing. Like, you know, when they were rebooting Star Trek, I was very leery. I was like, oh man, how do you replace Captain Kirk? How do you replace Leonard Nimoy? You know, of all things. And I don't know. Like going in and watching the movie, the story was so good, I didn't care anymore. I really didn't care that the guy didn't act like Kirk, you know, with the pauses and all that shit. I liked his Captain Kirk, and I loved Zachary Quinto. He was fantastic.
He was very good as Spock, though. He was
really good.
He was being Leonard Nimoy without being Leonard Nimoy, which was the best compliment you could give. And then the guy they got for McCoy was really good too. And of course, like Bones, and then obviously Simon Pegg for. Yeah, so the cast was really well done. But all of those guys can act. And like, if you're going to reboot something, you got to make sure that you might not want to get somebody who mimics the other person, but you better make sure that they can act. And that's a good cast. And, you know, and that's why I think it gets me so excited for a possibility of an Obi-Wan movie, because Ewan McGregor can act. And as much as I hated, you know, the prequels, and as much as the turn to the dark side sucked, and as much as the choreographed fight scene at the end didn't, like, it felt really short to me.
Yeah.
His speech to Anakin at the end of that movie, you know, was gut-wrenching, even though I didn't feel the relationship that was being forced on us between those two.
Right.
But because he was such a good actor and he nailed that scene, like, you know, you still felt for the scene, you know, and so I think if you can get that, you know, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi,
that all the way through the movie. You need that all the way through the movie.
I mean, the guy can do it all. So I think that's great. And we're gonna post a hashtag to the title of this podcast too, and it's gonna be hashtag Obi-Wan SW story. So see if we get any play on that. Once again, that's hashtag Obi-Wan SW story. So we're going to post that on here and see if we get any any kind of hits on those, or not hits, but see if it kind of takes off. But
yes.
So
yes. I definitely want to see that story more than anything else.
Yeah, what's that?
I definitely want to see that story more than anything else.
Yeah.
I'm not really into, a Han Solo story, I guess. I'm not really into, some people mention Yoda. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
What else? I wouldn't mind a Boba Fett one.
But I don't want a prequel Boba Fett. I want a Boba Fett where he, like, they'd have to take it to where, like, almost like, remember in that Tom Hanks movie, Road to Perdition, where he's really not the good guy?
Yeah, the hitman.
Yeah. So they need to do a movie where, like that, because Boba Fett's not a good guy, and you can't do. So I want a movie where you're not supposed to be rooting for the bad guy, but like the bad guy's still awesome. You know, like what other movies come to mind where the bad guy's the main character? Oh, shit.
Yeah, there's a few of them. You have to really sit
just can't think of them. But Road to Perdition was the first one that came to my head, because he really wasn't a good guy in that movie. He was was a hitman.
What about Leon the Professional?
Oh yeah, but there's more heartwarming stuff to that where I don't see that in a Boba Fett character.
Yeah, he's not a walking around with a little girl.
yeah. But there's like a story in there for I'd be interested to see a Boba Fett story, because but it would have to be as Boba Fett. It wouldn't have to be like when he was a kid. Like, I don't want to see that shit.
No, I don't want to see that either. I don't want to see like right where his dad gets killed and then he just like turns to a life of crime. I want to see him already in his prime, already like doing his thing, working for. You could bring Jabba back. You can have him.
Would be awesome. Okay, so you know that movie Boondock Saints, but even though
I love it. That's one of my favorites.
Okay, so even though they're good guys in the movie, they're doing some really horrible shit to bad people.
Yeah.
But if you took that type of a theme where you're doing something bad, but it still looks badass, so you don't really care, like, I would be okay with that. Like, if Boba Fett got screwed out of, like, a bounty or something, and he goes back and just, like, basically kills the entire gang or something, it's like that kind of feeling where it's him against everybody else, like, or an entire, like, gang. That would be awesome for me.
We need Tarantino to do it.
Oh my God, that would be so fucking violent.
It needs to be violent. He's not a good guy.
You would never see that though, because it's Disney, and you're not going to get anything other than.
No,
I think the hardest PG-13 you're going to get is probably Rogue One.
Probably, yeah. You're right, and they got a good director for that too. I'm really looking forward to that. They talked about a long time ago also doing a TV series, because I guess they wrote a bunch of like episodes already, 50 to 100 episodes or something like that, but they said it was too expensive to produce, and so they were waiting for the cost to come down so they can start cranking those out. And rumor was it was a series about the Star Wars underworld.
Yeah.
Like, the stuff that happens beneath the surface. Which I don't know if that would have been interesting or not. I don't know. Like, when I think Star Wars, I think lightsabers and Jedi and Sith, and I think all this stuff. So that's why I'm very intrigued about Rogue One. Very, very intrigued, because how do you tell a Star Wars story that doesn't have like the Force and and all that?
Because
stuff?
It's an interesting story, and what makes certain of the parts of the Clone Wars cartoons interesting was that the characters were good.
Yeah.
And the stories were good. There's certain episodes in that series that don't have anything to do with the Jedi, really.
Right, that's true. That's true.
So, but the story was so good, and the characters you cared about, and I mean that's my main concern about a Star Wars TV show. Like, I don't want to see like Star Wars like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, I don't want to see 26 episodes.
No, and the opposite, you don't want to see a CW, Star Wars. Where
Yes,
it's just
I don't want to see that either.
Angsty teenagers.
So I would love it if they went to Netflix, personally.
They signed a deal. Disney has a deal with Netflix, man. They have a deal, and you could do an R-rated Boba Fett. You could do,
Yes, yeah.
Because quite frankly, like Daredevil, I mean, it never goes over the top as far as like nudity and stuff like that.
There's a lot of blood in there, though.
But there's a lot there's a lot of people getting beat up, and I'm okay with that kind of R. You don't need nudity and swearing in a Star Wars series, but you need like action and grit and some really cool shit happening. Netflix would be the bomb, man. That would be the best place to put a Star Wars.
I mean, they already have like a relationship with them with the Marvel, Marvel stuff. So like, if you want to go gritty and you want to go like Boba Fett or you want to go underground Star Wars, like put it on Netflix and just be precise. Because the biggest problem with like, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that it's like 26 episodes and it feels like 20 of them are fillers.
Yeah, I think that show would be really awesome if it was like 12 or 13 episodes a season. I think it'd be a lot. I'm starting to really like that format for a lot of different shows. Especially, oh man, you got to watch it. Ash versus Evil Dead. We got to talk about that.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna wait till the last episode airs.
Yeah, this Saturday.
And then I'm gonna go back and do that. But let's get back to Obi-Wan.
Yeah. So Obi-Wan.
So you asked me about what I would want to see in an Obi-Wan movie.
What do you want to see? What do I want to see? Oh,
yeah.
I definitely want to see him. I think you mentioned it, but I want to see him train. I want to see him talk to Qui-Gon. I want to see him kind of do a kind of like, not like Castaway, but like, maybe scenes where he's on his own and he's like, I don't know, like doing things, like building a lightsaber or like fucking.
Did you see The Martian?
Yeah, I love The Martian.
Dude, when you said Castaway, the first thing I thought of was that scene in The Martian where he like finally like fixes himself and shoves that grape juice, and he's like, "Fuck you, Mars." How fucking funny would that? Just picture Obi-Wan just sitting there like fucking getting sand out of everything, and he just fucking sits there with his lightsaber, and he's like, "Fuck you, Tatooine."
I want him to make like a fake Vader out of rocks, and he just like hits it.
I want to see him like laying down, looking up at the roof of his like little hut, tossing his lightsaber and like singing, TV show melodies.
Yeah, I want to see him hooking up with Tusken Raiders and
yeah. He's like, which are you, scum or villainy? Be both.
Both. Oh, okay. So, I want to segue because this has to do with Kenobi. One of the biggest rumors out there right now, or speculation, is about where Rey comes from. So
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, kind of a,
I hope it's not true.
I hope it's not true either, but dang, that guy made a pretty good case. But it still doesn't really hold, complete amount of water. But
because in the original trilogy, I felt like Obi-Wan was like,
the true Last Jedi, like a true.
Yeah,
Jedi.
like the true, like he followed the order. He did what he was supposed to do, and for him to actually like get it on with somebody and have a kid, like we kind of ruined the whole Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi thing for me.
Yeah, but he could be like, George Costanza. He's like not truly the master of his domain.
I don't know.
It would take a really hot alien to like sway Obi-Wan. Like, what if Obi-Wan's like, "Fuck, dude, I'm the last one who gives a shit anymore," and just like totally bones it out for the next few years.
Well, in a Clone Wars, he has a certain love for that princess. Remember?
Oh yeah, that's right. But that's not canon.
But that's not canon. But there was like but they never go past that in the Clone Wars.
No.
And just the idea that Obi-Wan has a certain affection for somebody, but that's a lot of that character took like almost a season or two to build their relationship to where you actually believed that Obi-Wan had that kind of love for somebody, like for a female, because Obi-Wan never, and before then Obi-Wan never. There's no talk about a Jedi doing anything with a woman. So,
but it's not out of the realm of possibility. It just feels like a, kind of far fetched or something, or kind of like they're really trying to like make this crazy twist kind of thing.
You mean the
with Rey? Yeah. So basically, the rumor or the speculation was that Rey is Obi-Wan's kid or grandkid. So like Obi-Wan impregnated somebody way back when, and then that person had another kid, and that ended up being Rey. And the only one that really knows about it would be Luke, because Luke talks to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's, by the way, I think I have I had a kid. I feel it in the Force or whatever, because maybe he didn't know. I don't know. Like, you know, I feel it, and so Luke takes it upon himself to find Rey and like drop her off on a shitty planet like he was dropped off. He's like, "Fuck you, Obi-Wan, you did this to me, I'm going to do it to you." You know. But it just, I don't know, the more I think about it, the more far-fetched it seems even more now.
So I think the biggest problem with that for me, and I don't know if you agree or not, but the biggest problem with that for me is that it takes away from the original trilogy Obi-Wan, the feeling that I had for that character.
It does. That's the biggest
to me,
thing.
it's almost it's not as bad. It's not nowhere near as bad, but it's on the same realm of Han shooting first.
Right.
It takes away that feeling of what the character was intended to be.
Yeah.
But he's intended to be this like all-knowing, all-powerful last Jedi Master, and for him to go against his
code
teachings and the Jedi code just because he's alone, like, to me that takes away from who he was, because it's more character building if he stayed a hermit and did nothing like that and stayed true to the code, even though he was stuck on this desert planet. To me, it reinforces the character if he didn't do anything, which in this case, if he did do something, for me, it would take away from the character just based on rumor alone.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be true.
I totally agree.
Thinking that it's going to be Luke's daughter is probably going to be true, but who knows?
Well, from a story point of view, I almost think like it's better if she's nobody's daughter. She's just force sensitive. Like, why can't they just do that?
And that she was just dropped off to a planet by some random person or some people we don't know.
Well, I don't know. Like, she says, I'm waiting for my family. It could have been somebody on the run. It could be, who knows? I just think it's just, again, Leia would have known about a kid that Luke had. Somebody would have known something. It's like, how do you keep something like that a secret for a really long time?
Luke was gone for a really long time. I don't know how long, but he was gone for a really long time. So there's no telling, like, what could have happened up until that point. Like, he could have had a child or something, and maybe Kylo Ren does know about it, which is why he seemed so sensitive to the fact, like, after that one First Order officer told him about a girl with a staff or something like that. And he pulls that guy in by the neck using the Force. So, like, he seems really sensitive to this female that all of a sudden is part of the story. So, and here's the other thing about storytelling too: if Rey is the daughter of some people we don't know who the hell they are, like, I mean, some random people, because, like, now you'd have to spend some kind of time frame explaining and actually giving a shit of why Rey was dropped off on the planet. If it's part of, like, the main characters or part of somebody that even if it is Obi-Wan, you could explain it away in maybe a paragraph or two in some cutscenes. But if you don't know who the people are, like, it's going to be hard for you to explain, like, well, who the fuck are these people? Like, even if it's Obi-Wan, let's say our biggest fear about that rumor is true, right? And it's Obi-Wan's kid. You kind of know that he was stuck on Tatooine, right? And you can cut the scenes. You could have a cut scene or something and explain away what happened, because you know who Obi-Wan is, you know what he went through, and you know what, that he was in isolation for 20-something years. So you have a background story for Obi-Wan. If you do something for Rey that has to nobody, like, no character has ever been introduced or Rey's parents, you have to tell all that shit to even give a crap.
That's true. But, Luke could have known her family. He could have said to them, get her the fuck out of here. Like, there's this crazy guy going around killing Jedi again. Get her out of here.
Yeah, but then there's that. But then why out of everybody does Rey? Why does the lightsaber call out to Rey? It can't be because she's on the light side. There has to be some kind of, either she was connected to the Jedi Academy Luke was trying to build, or she's connected to Luke. Like, it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even so, right, like, why would that lightsaber call out to Rey, even if she was part of the new Jedi Academy? It would only call out to her if she has some kind of, like, relationship either with Luke or with Vader, or,
I guess so, because the cave does call out to Luke, and it had Vader in it and all that stuff. But then again, that cave didn't. I mean, it's not like Vader went to that cave before. It was just Force-sensitive cave.
Right.
You know, like someone explained to me, I think a long time ago, the cave at Dagobah, a Sith Lord died there or something like that. So the dark side, the presence is crazy strong there, and so like the Force just kind of like calls out to Luke, and he goes in there and that sees his possible future.
I thought I saw something where Dagobah is like, I think I heard about that, but that Dagobah is very heavy on the dark side, so that it would mask Yoda's presence there.
Oh, that's actually a better explanation. I like that better.
Well, as to why he just goes to Dagobah, like you just in the episode 3, all you hear from Yoda is like, from an old friend, which is Qui-Gon, that told him to go to Dagobah, but he never says fucking why.
Right.
It was just like a toss away storyline, like, hey, let me just fix all this shit in 10 minutes.
Right, yeah, the ending was so rushed. I didn't like that at all. And they took out a really cool scene of Yoda, shipping off to Dagobah too. They completely took that out. And his reasoning was, it took away from the story. I'm like, it was 20 seconds. Like, it's not, it didn't, no.
I'm sure you could have got out 20 seconds somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like that whole balcony scene between Padme and Anakin.
Oh, where they were talking?
Yeah, where they're like, I love you.
Oh, that was...
No.
Oh,
that
was
crap. I love you so
much. The best scene between the two of them was the scene where they didn't talk. They just, were just, kind of, they were across the city, staring into the city or staring at each other from really far away. I really liked that scene. It was, quiet, and they're just kind of sitting there, and then he decides he's going to go and, stop them from killing Palpatine. It was kind of a neat scene, but...
Yeah, that was a good scene, and that's really sad that their best scene together was that they're not even in the same room together.
They're not even in the same room. They're not talking to each other. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just pretty typical. Pretty typical.
The best scene that they had was when they were not acting.
Yeah. Actually, that scene they recorded them just waiting to be in another scene. They were just sitting there waiting.
It's like, I want you to think of this math problem really hard.
Yeah. And go.
Yeah. All right, so there's our hopes and dreams for an Obi-Wan. I know we kind of went off on a tangent, which we will do a lot, so be forewarned that we go off on tangents, but mainly we would love to see an Obi-Wan solo movie.
Yes, with Ewan McGregor, baby.
Once again, hashtag Obi-Wan SW story, which we will have on the podcast. And we will talk to you guys next time. Maybe we should try to go, we'll probably try to do something non-Star Wars next time so we can give people a Star Wars break.
There's lots of things to talk about. Number one thing I definitely want to talk about is Deadpool. But,
oh, God, yeah.
So awesome, man.
All right, there's your Obi-Wan story.
Obi-Wan, there you go. Ewan McGregor, let's do it. Come
Later.
on, Disney. See you later.